Well, Juan Williams, Jesse Waters, and a Rice Krispie is her footrest. Dana Perino, La 5. Polls are closed in Georgia. We await results.
Oh, my God.
The special congressional election in the 6th district is supposed to be a referendum on Trump. The Democratic choice, Jon Ossoff, rolled in the cash. It was impressive until you realize donations came from 7,000 Californians and only 800 from his own district. And that tells you who's behind him. People who don't even live there, just like Ossoff. Celebrities like Alyssa Milano, Chelsea Handler, George Takei, they're all over this election. So as the media obsesses over Putin's failed meddling in our elections, how is this not similar? Here you have one state meddling in another. How is California not Russia and Georgia not America? The only difference are the celebrities who are way more obnoxious than Putin. I get it. California and Georgia, they're in the same country. But still, you have aristocratic outsiders instructing the rubes on how to vote, undermining an election thousands of miles away. Talk about interference, obstruction. So why would these interlopers do that? It's an emotional thing. The Trump election was humiliating. It was painful. So this election offers celebrities their psychotherapy. They're using the district as a giant Valium to soothe their bruised egos. Now, that emotion is missing on the other side. Here's why. If you ask Trump voters in October, what would you prefer? To win the election with Trump and lose a seat in Georgia, or lose to Hillary and still have that seat? I think you know the answer. So no matter what happens tonight, who wins or loses, it's only because of Donald Trump winning. That still has to hurt, and we'll still need more therapy. All right, you got Hollywood, California rich liberals, Jesse, and also New York millionaires from the East colluding to steal an election.
Oh, my
yes,
God.
you're saying the carpetbagger is colluding with San Francisco to hack Georgia's democracy.
Exactly.
This is exactly what happened. This guy's a puppet. He parachutes in with daddy's money. He's obviously a carpetbagger. He's handsome. He's got a nice head of hair, but he's a Pelosi Democrat. He's for the Iran deal. He's for Obamacare, but, you know, he hangs out with lobbyists in his spare time. His business did deals with Al Jazeera. He gets a lot of his money from Hollywood, a lot of it from the Bay Area, barely any of it from Georgia. So, you know, the Democrats said they want money out of politics, but they're literally buying a congressional district.
Right.
Listen, this is not necessarily Trump country here. He only won the district by 1%. Romney won it by 23%. I don't think a special election...
Jesse, you're on TV right now at Karen Handel. Sorry, go ahead.
I don't think a special election is going to determine who's going to win the midterm elections, but as of now, Democrats 0-4 in special elections. They need this tonight, and results so far, it's not looking good.
Yeah, you know, but it is tight. Some show her up, some show her down. Kimberly, this is pure collusion to subvert an election. I'm going to keep saying it.
And there's actual facts to prove it. That's the thing. And yeah, look, when you think about it, you know, I used to live in San Francisco, probably benefited from some of those election dollars when, you know, Mike was running for office there. But why are the people from San Francisco and California dumping all this money trying to buy a seat? Can you imagine if it was the other way around?
Yeah, sure.
And how about the fact that he doesn't even live in his district?
I know.
How about that?
Yeah.
Like 2 hours to walk, you know, somebody timed it. So
he has Uber, though, Kimberly.
Is that what it is? From the lobbyists back home. The problem is that people need to care about something like this, to say we don't want someone who doesn't even live in the district, who doesn't, you know, represent us, just coming in to take a seat for no reason. To me, that doesn't make any sense that he could be as successful, I guess, as he's doing in the polling up until this point, when the guy, they just kind of picked him out of obscurity with very little background whatsoever and said, you'll do.
Yeah. Just like a few other people I know, Juan. Doesn't this smack of a bunch of elitists putting their noses in other people's lives, Mr. Williams?
No. I was curious.
Next question.
I was curious about what you said because it struck me. Wait a minute. The Supreme Court has said you can give money, and that's free speech. And you have a situation here where you have foreign money, hacking, buying U.S. officials, inviting charges of treason, or people who are, you know, not faithful to the American
Are you referring
flag.
to Hillary with the buying the election?
No, I'm saying that's what at stake. And you say that's like Californians putting money into a Georgia race.
97%
It's an
of the money
analogy.
from outside the district.
Yeah, well,
That's-
it seems to me that there's one situation where you have
sad.
people who are concerned about undermining sanctions against Russia, trying to weaken Americans' resolve. That's very different than the Hollywood elite saying that, hey, this is a very red district, and we think it's time to use it as a stage to show that there's opposition to Trump.
I think you actually agreed with me in the sense that you just admitted it's a red district being invaded by blue people, Dana. The blue are invading the red. Okay, let's say they raise enough money and they win here. Are they going to, if they do this in every election, say in 2018, get a bunch of celebrity millionaires, right? You could get like 10 millionaires, put all their money, and they could just win all the elections, and the whole country could be run by left-wing millionaires.
That'd be a lot of money.
It would be a couple billion, I
and
think.
it would bankrupt them. So then would that be beneficial?
I don't know.
So if Juan were thinking in Juan's way, Juan might have said,
Juan's
how is
world.
this any different than what happened in the Scott Brown special election when he was New Hampshire, but really running in Massachusetts, and then all that national money went into that special election, and the whole issue was about Obamacare.
Yes.
It was about who will, and this election, actually, this special tonight, Obamacare or the replacement of it really became a big issue. The interesting thing for this also is that the Congressional Leadership Fund, which is like the outside money group for
Right.
Republicans that Paul Ryan runs, they've dumped a whole bunch of money into there, and that's not coming from Georgia either. The other problem for
They had to.
Democrats is that while these suburbs that they had to, part of the reason is too, the Democrats had one person that they wanted to have as their sacrificial lamb in this, and that was Ossoff, and then he actually did fairly well out of that. The Republicans in the primary for this one special election had 15 candidates.
Yeah.
So that's why he actually got all of that attention, because remember
Right.
3 months ago, there was the special to see if he would go in. The demographics are changing in these suburban districts, and so that's why you see, if you look at the map, President Trump's electoral map, the beautiful map, it's red almost all across the country because that's the rural areas.
Right.
Suburban America is changing a little bit. So in the long run, I don't think there's a lot of election lessons to be learned out of this special, but in the long run, the Democrats and the Republicans are going to be fighting over those people. But putting somebody like Ossoff up, it surprises me that they give him so much money because they care so little about principle, because these people in California were Bernie Sanders supporters.
Yeah.
And he's actually a very conservative Democrat. Basically, he's running as a Republican.
Yeah,
That's
but he'll
right.
change.
Yeah,
He'll
exactly.
change.
You know,
When he
you know who's
loses, I'll
But
be-
he's not going to win. She's going to win by
Are you
a hair.
sure? You think so?
I think she will win by a hair, maybe a little more.
Well, I'll be
Because I
laughing my ass off.
But you know whose district this
That'll
is, by
take
the
a
way?
while.
Hey, let's not get
No
personal.
fat shaming.
Oh, my God.
Bannon taught me everything I know. Yeah.
Let's-
You know whose district this is in the fictional world?
Who?
This is Frank Underwood's district.
Oh,
Yeah.
interesting.
It is. And what Dana was saying about the diversity of district is really striking me, because it's not only that it's becoming more diverse, larger Hispanic population more so than black, but it's the most educated district in the country that's been a Republican district. That's 56% college educated.
college,
The
yeah.
most. So this is the reason the Democrats want this is they see an opportunity to peel away some of the Republicans who are anti-Trump, concerned about the health care bill and the like, but specifically because upper educated whites, suburban whites, are the targets for Democrats from here on out heading towards 2018.
Well, I just got what the South Carolinas went to the Republicans.
Norman, yeah, that just came
Ralph
in.
Norman?
Results. Yep.
It's great to hear the name Ralph.
You like that name?
Yeah, you don't hear it much anymore.
Ralph Norman, like a guy with 2 first names going to Congress.
Yeah, yes. I want to roll. This is some interesting tape from a debate between Karen Handel and John Ossoff about where he lives.
What I would like to know is exactly who are you going to vote for in this election?
Is that the question? Okay. Well, I think Secretary Handel is referring to my residence, which is a matter that I've addressed transparently throughout this campaign. I grew up in the 6th Congressional District. I was born and raised in Georgia, unlike Secretary Handel, who was born and raised in Washington, D.C.
Is he old enough to run for Congress? I mean,
Did somebody
looks
card
like
him?
my son.
Yeah.
Seriously. Yeah, I mean, what's the guy lives a 2-hour walk away? I think he's living at his dad's house or something like that, but then he got engaged to a woman in the district right when he started running. I mean, speak about Frank Underwood. Who knows what's really going on?
Oh, you're terrible.
I'm sure they're very much in love, but the whole thing is kind of strange. I mean, what's with these
What is
Democrats and
going
these
on?
residency issues?
You know, John Lott wrote a piece for FoxNews.com today, and he makes a great point that as government expands, there's more at stake. So we all now
These are all national.
Yeah, so now everything's a national election. They'll pour $30 million for one congressional seat in Georgia because government has invaded all of our lives. Government is taking over health care. So that makes people want to vote for more government or vote for a liberal. So it's now changing.
And that's why I think that the House Republicans don't have a lot to worry about for 2018. I actually think that they will be able to keep the House. And I'm going to make a prediction here that you guys might have to hold me to next year. I think that the way the Senate map is for the 2018 elections, I believe that the Senate Republicans will actually pick up a seat or two.
Wow.
And they're not going to lose, they're not going to backtrack.
Wow.
And partly that's because if you look at a state like Missouri, President Trump has great support in Missouri.
Yeah.
And Claire McCaskill, the Democrat senator, she's running for re-election. She got very close to Hillary Clinton. Trump's voters are very engaged, and I think that she'll have a hard time.
I'm just
So there's a
proud.
pickup.
I'm just
Your
proud
mouth
if she
to God
wins
here.
tonight. She didn't even body slam a reporter.
Yeah.
I thought that was a very big accomplishment.
Yeah, that's a lesson that we could all learn.
You know, Price won this
Kimberly.
district. Price won this district last time, 62% of the vote, right? I think Handel is, you know, you guys are saying Handel's looking good right now, right?
Right
I'd
now.
say it's tight.
But
Yeah,
it's
I'd say-
tight.
Right,
but-
looking good.
But the idea is she's going to, let's say she wins by 1 or 2 or loses by 1 or 2, but there's going to be all of this great hee-haw about it. But the fact is,
Oh, no, if she
Hee-haw?
loses, we'll never talk about it
What do
again.
you mean by hee-haw?
Oh, just because it's
No.
South, you have to bring up
because the
hee-haw?
Yes, that's exactly right. But the Democrats are going to make a big deal if Ossoff wins and the Republicans if Handel wins. And actually,
I don't know. Could you imagine if Hollywood liberals cared as much about national security or job growth or the economy as they do about cybersecurity as they do about a seat in Georgia? Something to
They
think
must
about.
have money to burn.
I think they do, or they need a hobby. I guess, you know.
They have a lot of money in San
Yeah.
Francisco.
All right, next. Will the Trump administration take action against North Korea for the death of American Otto Warmbier? Senator McCain and others are calling it murder, so how should the U.S. respond? That's ahead.
Address the tragedy again today.
It's a total disgrace what happened to Otto. That should never, ever be allowed to happen. And frankly, if he were brought home sooner, I think the result would have been a lot different. He should have been brought home that same day.
Senator John McCain calls it murder. But will North Korea face the consequences for Otto's death? Take a look at what the president tweeted today. Quote, while I greatly appreciate the efforts of President Xi and China to help with North Korea, it has not worked out. At least I know that China tried. Okay, so Greg, in this situation last night, I said this was a murder. This was a homicide committed by North Korea. Kim Jong-un and his regime should be held accountable for the murder, the heinous murder of an American, a United States citizen.
Yeah, I think right now that tweet's interesting to me. I think we're gonna see the beginning of the gaslighting of North Korea. He should tweet tomorrow, we are changing the executive order against assassination, and then with a little happy face emoticon and hashtag NK, and just say nothing more. It's refreshing, at least to me, to be America to be the unpredictable force in this equation. You know, for so long, we've been the one that's been solving for X, you know, trying to figure out the crazy people. Now it's their turn to find out what we're going to do next. I think we should target the countries that are doing business with North Korea.
Absolutely.
And make sure they're not making any money and possibly losing money, and just mess with them on all counts. Do whatever we can to make their lives hell. Take it back to the neighborhood metaphor. You know, if there's a creep in your neighborhood, you tell your kids to stay away from him. That's what you do. And we're the parent here. We got to tell these other countries, you stay away from him or else.
Well, there has to be sanctions. There should be economic sanctions. There should be repercussions. I'm confident that the president and his administration will do something about this, Dana. And there's also some calls about restricting travel to North Korea. Some of these tour agencies.
By the way, why is Isn't it restricted? Shouldn't it be already?
There's like travel warnings from the State Department, like severe travel warnings, like you shouldn't go, and that we can't guarantee what would happen to you if you go there, things like that.
Right.
But it's not a ban. There's not a ban on. But I guess that there could be. I'm sorry. Did you have a question?
No, I was interested in your reaction to that
Okay.
and about what the repercussions should be, economic and otherwise.
Well, I think the economic thing, sure, you would hope that it could work, but this is a regime that is willing to starve its own people. So I don't know if we have any more intelligence, because it's difficult to get intelligence there from North Korea because it's such an opaque society. But I do think, obviously, that is one way to do it. And I think one of the things President Trump was doing in his tweet today was trying to say to China, because they're meeting with the U.S. is meeting with the Chinese tomorrow, that, you know, like, I know you tried, but you better do something else. And so setting up that meeting so that it is more successful. Interesting to me with Senator McCain, this is a man who obviously knows what it's like to be held by enemies and tortured. And thankfully, he came back to us and has been able to live a full life and to give so much to his country through public service. But the fact that he is saying murder, I think that President Trump can utilize Senator McCain's, his expertise and his support in order to try to push something. But then where do you go from there? I don't think a surgical strike is actually possible on the nuclear weapons when they have weapons aimed at Seoul, South Korea, and what are the consequences of that? The containment strategy hasn't been working all that well. We had the six-party talks. Obviously, it's basically now come down to the United States and North Korea unless the Chinese decide to do something quite dramatic. And I guess I'll just sit. I hope that they will, but I'm skeptical.
Okay. And you think that they should. Okay, Jesse, your thoughts?
Yeah, strategic patience is officially over. I think Trump came in here to do some things with the world and do them quickly because he's tired of things, I think, just getting worse and worse and worse. And I think that's why the American people elected him. I think the tweet basically tells the Chinese premier, you know what, you tried, but it's getting near the end, and you better throw a Hail Mary here because I'm going to start doing something, and we're going to have to act without you. Or just to tell the Chinese, you know what, we have other options. We don't have to go through you. We can use other levers of power. I think McCain's statement is incredibly strong and persuasive to the president. I think that's going to add pressure to the president. I think his national security team is going to pressure him, and I think he feels a lot of the emotion from the American people who are absolutely outraged by this. I think you can slap sanctions on Chinese companies that do business with North Korea. You can institute a full travel ban on North Korea. Electronic warfare is obviously on the table. Some of our fighter jets buzz the DMZ.
Do you support kinetic activity?
Exactly. So I think there are a range of things we could do short of all-out war.
Juan, your reflections and what do you think should be permissible here? What should be on the table?
Well, anything can be on the table. I thought that what Senator McCain said, the murder charge, is also reflected now in what you're reading. Gordon Chang, who's quite an expert in this area, said basically, you know, there's got to be a severe cost for harming an American citizen. So what is President Trump going to do? Now, today at the White House, lots of discussion about the fact that Trump said he was willing to meet with Kim Jong-un. People are saying, well, is he still willing to meet with this man now who has basically, in the words of Senator McCain, murdered an American citizen?
Not anymore.
Well, that's the question. He didn't. There was not a complete answer, Jesse.
Well,
nobody
Spicer said that's
was not ruled
probably
out.
going off the table.
Well, but it wasn't ruled out. And so the question is, what is he willing to do? I'll tell you what he was willing to do today. He was willing to try to slander President Obama and say, oh, if this kid had come home earlier, oh, the kid might have survived.
It's not a slander.
It is a slander
because
what happened was 10 Americans, 10, released from North Korea during President Obama's tenure.
Well, they went after Bergdahl pretty strongly, who was a deserter. Maybe they should have put the same type of pressure on North Korea to get him back.
That is such a political blasphemy against the President of the United States to say that President Obama
didn't say it. The father of Otto said it.
I'm talking about what President Trump said today. I thought it was rude and out of father. And clearly the father's in emotional distress. You could forgive him.
He would be too,
but it's not true.
So is the president.
But it's not true that, and it's clear that President Obama, and I think every administration has made efforts.
You didn't say President Obama. Why do you attribute it that he's only referring to that versus the fact?
If he had come
you know how
home
I took
earlier.
it? I took it that North Korea should have released him in time, so he should have had proper medical care instead of waiting till he was in complete coma.
You're saying
they
North
should have
Korea.
released
Correct.
it, yes, and we should have done more.
But that's not the way it came across, Kimberly. And let me just tell you,
if we did all we could, then he'd be home.
There were 17 Americans detained over the course of the last 10 years in North Korea. 3 of them still there. And so we've got to figure out how to get them out of there right now. That's the priority.
You know, Rodman, we haven't heard from him. I think he left North Korea. He's in China, I think, for now. I wonder if he gave any of this a second thought while he was there. Because while he was there, you know, Otto's parents are like going through hell, and he's got his little coin shirt on, trying to bring basketball to North Korea. I wonder if he had even a thought about this at all.
Well, he left with a T-shirt that said Ambassador Rodman.
Yeah, so I guess he's the winner in all this.
Terrible. Okay, well, something needs to be done. We're going to keep a close eye on this. And ahead, new tensions flare with Russia as we try to take out ISIS in Syria. The latest on that escalating conflict when the
gun. This comes despite a threat from Russia that it will now target American aircraft in western Syria. The warning issued after we shot down one of Bashar Assad's warplanes that dropped bombs near U.S.-backed fighters yesterday. That incident prompted Russia to fly one of its fighter jets dangerously close to ours, coming within 5 feet of our spy plane in the Baltic Sea. So, Greg, things are heating up. So Putin's basically said, if you fly west of the Euphrates, we're coming after you. So is that saber rattling, or do you think he means it?
It's just like a bar fight in those old Western movies. You don't even know who you're hitting. And the fact is, both Russia and the United States share a common goal. Can we just wait? Can we just wait until we eradicate ISIS? And then you could start maneuvering over the land. But right now, they're doing all their maneuvering now. They're trying to figure out what's going to be, what are they going to control after ISIS is gone? Right. ISIS isn't gone yet. And if we turn on each other because we have disagreements over Syria, then ISIS is going to be there longer, and they're going to win. So can't we just wait, kill the savages first, and then we'll have the bar fight?
But, Kimberly, what we haven't actually talked about is another country, and that is basically Iran, that is sitting back and really hoping that Russia can do its dirty work and help them preserve Syria and recreate the Persian Empire. In their mind, this is what they want. Okay, well, Fantasy Island, everybody enjoys it. They would like to do that. I don't think they're going to be able to do that. And I'll tell you what, I think that this is a little bit of bluster on the part of Russia, because they've really gotten a lot of what they wanted to achieve there. They wanted to stabilize Assad. They have him there. They really don't care what happens in the eastern part of Syria. They were able to establish an air base and have a military presence there. That's what they care about. They've been able to accomplish those goals. Those were their big ticket items. So do you think they're going to try to jeopardize all of that by starting to shoot down U.S. planes? Not a chance. But Jesse, that's coming pretty close. So two U.S. officials say that the armed Russian fighter jet buzzed a U.S. air reconnaissance aircraft coming within 5 feet of the aircraft. That's two U.S. officials. Basically, to me, that's pretty risky.
Yeah, I mean
5 feet is, as Greg pointed out in the break, is my height.
Yes.
I wasn't going to say it, but I'm thankful Greg said it. Yeah, Russia's playing both sides right now. It's a proxy war. Who's going to dominate the Middle East? Is it going to be America and Saudi Arabia, or is it going to be Russia and Iran? But what the Russians are doing, they're playing both sides. They're going to say, you know, I'm helping America to fight ISIS, but at the same time, they're helping Syria and Iran fight America. So they're talking out two sides of their mouth. All we care about is defeating ISIS, but there's going to be this big power vacuum, so everyone's just trying to claim territory after we defeat them. And are we going to let the Iranians just slide in, or the Syrians and the Russians slide in? Because it creates, like you said before, this regional kind of trade route where these pipelines go through and business goes through, and they have the access to the Mediterranean, and it squeezes out the Kurds and it squeezes out the Saudis. So, you know, it just looks like, you know, everybody voted for Donald Trump to kind of get out of this stuff. And now all of a sudden, it looks like we're getting in the middle of this stuff again. So hopefully we can stay out of this region, because it's just like it's such a mess.
The problems come to his desk.
I know, he's got to face the facts.
Why can't we let radical Islam be somebody else's problem for once? After we get rid of ISIS, if you want to go in and deal with that stuff, deal with it. It's your problem.
Well, partly it might be because of and also Iran.
I mean, after we kill ISIS.
And Iran is becoming a nuclear weaponized country. Congress is getting itchy because they are wanting to have some sort of a say in terms of the troop levels in Afghanistan, or what the strategy in Syria and ISIS. And so where do you think that goes in the next month?
Well, I mean, if Jesse's concerned about, you know, Trump said we were going to get out of this, and now it's more of it. Look at Afghanistan, where we don't have a strategy. Everybody acknowledges, and yet we're putting more forces on the ground. It's kind of crazy, but the problem here in
we're trying to win.
Syria, well, so have a strategy. Let's say what it is. Remember, Trump said he was coming into office. He wasn't going to tell us what his strategy was.
You don't always want to tell the enemy what the strategy is.
Yeah, but maybe he was bluffing you, Jesse, and he didn't have a strategy. That's the point. But the bigger point to me is, will Trump stand up to Putin? Because Putin says right now, we're not going to even talk to the U.S. about
He just shot down a Syrian
deconfrontation.
jet.
Well, yeah, that's fine. So in the aftermath,
If he's
now
colluding
Putin
with the
said-
Russians, why is he shooting down their proxies' jets?
I didn't say he was colluding with the
You
Russians.
say he's not
on
going to
this.
stand up
The
to
question
Putin.
is, does he stand up now that Putin is threatening to shoot anything that comes into that area of Syria, including American?
Well, like, I would
don't
reverse that
think Trump's
question,
worried
though. I
about
mean, is
Putin.
Putin really that stupid?
Well, that's
and,
right.
and that crazy that he thinks that he could actually do that and not have massive retaliation against him?
Well, the question
If
is,
anyone's bluffing, it's
He's
Putin.
not,
Right, I
and he
agree.
won't. I stand by my first
That the
statement.
U.S. military is strong enough to win that fight.
Right.
But the question is he willing to make a statement and test Trump's hand and say, Trump, are you really willing to do this? And of course, the whole world. I mean, this is a threat to the
test
world.
him.
And then you've got Afghanistan going. I mean, it seems to me like, boy, there's a lot of stuff here out of control by a guy who came into office saying, I'm going to solve this right away, no problem.
Well,
Yeah, there were no
easy
problems
fixes.
before, right?
There was a
And
problem
Iran
before, but
didn't
not
do
as
so
much.
well with
Oh,
its
no.
missile
Yeah,
strikes
there was no
combat
ISIS before that. I wonder how that happened.
You know what also strikes me is I see that our allies are pulling away. Australia said they're not doing anything more. That's scary.
Yeah.
All right. Well, there's a lot to figure out there, of course. We got more. A lot of Americans, they don't trust the media. We've got another example to illustrate why. Next.
We have an update for the Georgia special election Congress seat here. Karen Handel, the Republican, up 52% over Democratic challenger Jon Ossoff at 48%, with 39% of the precincts reporting. So that's very, very good news for Ms. Handel, who, is facing a real big challenge there with a lot of out-of-state money coming in, a lot of Hollywood money coming in, and Democrats really looking to make a point here tonight with an upset victory. But it looks like Karen is hanging on so far, up by 4 points, with just under 50% of precincts reporting.
And they have us on TV. Did you notice that?
That's right, Fox News.
Bet
So
they do.
excited.
Should the mainstream media stop complaining and do their job? I think you know the answer. Here's the latest example of why so many Americans don't trust and should not trust what they're hearing on other networks like CNN. Here's their White House reporter, Jim Acosta.
The White House press secretary is getting to a point, Brooke, where he's just kind of useless. If he can't come out and answer the questions and they're just not going to do this on camera or audio, why are we even having these briefings or these gaggles in the first place? That's the White House behind me, the White House. And it's bizarre. I don't know what world we're living in right now.
White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer responded today.
I think that we have done a very good job of not just providing opportunities here at a daily briefing, but also making ourselves available as a staff, almost 24 hours a day when it comes down to it.
So the correspondent, Jim Acosta, Kimberly,
Yeah.
was the person that President Trump called fake news, very fake news.
Right.
Strategically.
But he's answered his questions at other briefings.
He has. He almost picks on him every single time. Strategically, if the fake news media is the enemy, does it make sense to feed that enemy on camera on a nightly and daily basis so they can just take that and shoot you with that?
Well, I see it a different way. I think that if you have something to share and you're in the White House, you have an obligation to talk and discuss with the media what's going on. But then you have, I think the best solution would be to have, Dana and I have talked about this, some points that you have to be able to put forward and proffer some things to give them to be able to talk about your accomplishments. I wouldn't always be on defense. You would come forward with programs or ideas, things that you have, to actually give them something to write about, to talk about, to investigate. Otherwise, it's like you're playing catch-up every day and they're making shots at them. But they've already been very public and transparent, saying they're reworking their communications strategy and their team. So maybe for a second they might not have as many briefings. President Trump is somebody that tries things, different. He does things by a different playbook. He's not afraid to take chances or to make changes and approach things in a different way. And I think we can give him the opportunity to do that, to continue the relationship with the press and driving forward, his agenda that he promised the American people. I think it can be done in a better way, and I think they're trying to do that.
The relationship between the press and the president, pretty bad one. A lot has to do with it with CNN. I mean, they've broken scoops like the president likes 2 scoops of ice cream. The president, is he afraid of stairs?
Time magazine.
They were involved with the fake Russian dossier. The other day they had to retract a story about, that Jim Comey was going to come out and say that, the president was under investigation. There's been a whole lot of these fake news stories coming out of CNN. Do you understand sometimes the animosity coming from the White House towards an outlet like CNN?
No.
Why not?
Well, for what Kimberly said, I mean, it seems to me you handle it in a more professional manner, you make your points, but the idea of a briefing, it just seems so essential and elemental to me. In fact, I think what's going on here is the White House had considered doing away with the daily briefing, just doing away with it. And they got resistance, tremendous resistance, including from Fox News, to say, no, that's not kosher, you can't do that. And now they've simply tried to, I think, slowly, steadily eliminate it by saying, oh, you can't have pictures, or you can't have sound, or only certain people are admitted in the gaggles and the like. I just think it's not the way to do business in a democracy, and I know that the president and many of his supporters feel there's an unlimited amount of criticism directed at him. Specifically, you mentioned CNN, but I just don't care who else is doing it. The press is not the enemy of the American people, and Donald Trump is not and should not see himself as some authoritarian figure who's going to trample our First Amendment rights.
Well, I don't think he's trampling anyone's rights. I just think that 90% of the news media coverage about the president's been negative. That's where the enemy line comes in. Dana, when they don't give the briefing on camera, is that to punish the media for negative reporting, or is that because they don't want to put someone out there that's just going to get annihilated on live television?
I've talked to Sean about it. I think that the White House benefits from having a daily presence on television to drive their story, but I also think the media is missing a huge story, and that's because there's so much of a hyper focus on the White House that there's an entire big federal government out there, and there are not reporters every day that you don't see reports out of the things that are happening at transportation or labor or EPA. Well, sometimes a little bit of EPA. You can't even find any story about Rick Perry at the Department of Energy. There's all sorts of things happening across the federal government, happening very quietly, and the media isn't focusing on it because they're so hyper focused on the White House itself. So if the media wants to actually broaden out and do its duty to citizens and cover the federal government, get out of the briefing room and go see some of those other places.
Bannon said that they weren't doing on-camera briefings with Spicer anymore because Spicer had gotten fatter.
Yes, he said he looked fat, but it was P-H-A-T. You know what the media is acting like?
Yeah.
They're acting like an ex who hasn't figured out that the president has moved on. They have the greatest opportunity of their career, and he's basically testing their relevance. He's the most transparent leader I think I've ever seen. He's doing it without them. He's doing it on Twitter. I mean, if you want to know